Hi guys, I thought it might just be fun to see how 3D modelling works, because it may be that it's not something that everyone knows about, so I thought I'd just do a quick overview. Please bear with me. Blender, this software I'm using today, is software I've only been using for a couple of weeks, so I'm a little bit unsure on it still, but I thought you might quite enjoy seeing how it works. So this is a free piece of software that you can download and use, anyone can use, for any purpose. So I'm going to create a teacup sitting on a table today. So here I've got my blank 3D view, and if I'm in here, I can go in here and I can pan around the 3D environment. You can see the grid there moving as I do that. And this black thing that I've just highlighted and it's gone orange is a virtual camera. So this is what I was talking about when I talked about a virtual camera. And that virtual camera has settings like focal length there. So this is a 35mm camera at the moment. I shan't change that. You can even change it to be presets like different Canon cameras or whatever. And then you've got things like the ability to add depth of field and stuff to it as well, which I shan't be doing this one. I'm going to create, first of all I'm going to model the teacup, then I'm going to give some light to the teacup scene on the table, and then I'm going to give some textures to it, and then I'm going to render it, and it'll take a few minutes to do that. So if I go to the front viewport, go to the top viewport, first thing I'm going to do is create a curve, which is like a Bezier spline, and that will then be rotated, lathed, or in this software they call it screwed, into the shape of a teacup, which we can then use. So let's create that first curve. So I'm going to create a Bezier curve. I'm going to go into edit mode for it. I'm going to make it a 2D curve so we get rid of those horrible lines, and then I'm just going to change the point types to vector, and that enables me to start creating my shape. And you can see here, hopefully if I zoom in on this, you can see a black line being created, and that black line is using these control handles to control the way that it looks, and I can extend that by clicking on E there, and that gives me another chunk of it. So I'm now just going to shape this to the essentially to be the cross section of a teacup shape approximately. It's not going to be the best teacup you've ever seen. You can see the principle here though. Let's just bring that in. So and we'll bring that one over to that side, and we'll bring the whole of those over that way a bit. Clearly you could spend some time getting this exactly right, which we're not going to do today because I'm trying to make this a short overview. But that's basically the cross-section of half of a teacup that we can then lathe around this axis here. So let's do that now. So I'm just going to turn that off. I'm just going to change the resolution of these a bit as well so that we get slightly smoother curves as well. And then I can go into this thing called a modifier and add a screw modifier, and I need to change the axis in fact to make it in the y-axis, and you can see it's now taken that shape and it's lathed it, but it's actually done it in the wrong place, so I need to change that. So I'm just going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to grab my vertices and I'm going to move them, and you'll see that if I just go into a perspective viewport now, you'll see that it's in edit mode. Excuse me. Just one moment. You'll see that in edit mode, if I go into edit mode for the object, I can actually move these items around, and it changes the lathe of it, the shape of it. So I'm just going to put it like that so that it's in the middle. See, it's got some quite bumpy edges on it now, so I want to increase the resolution of that, so make it 60, say, to make it smooth. Obviously I can bring it down to 1, it's really, really tiny. You can see what's happening there as I add more segments in, but I'm going to make it like that. So now we've got sort of a teacup shape. In fact, I might just pull that bottom section out a little bit to make it a little bit more like a cup rather than a bowl. So there's your teacup base form, the basic shape of it. Now we're going to add in a handle for it. So if I go to the, just create a torus for this. A torus is just like a donut. And I'm just going to go to the top viewport, and I'm going to remove some of the segments for this because we don't want all of them. So I'm just going to go into edit mode again, and I'm going to delete, just make sure we've got back face selected as well, and I'm just going to delete the faces there. That gives me half of a torus, and now I can rotate him. Do him by 90 degrees, and then I can move him into position in the teacup, scale him a bit. He's obviously too big, might scale him a bit like that as well, just for the sake of an interesting cup handle shape. Still a bit too big. Actually the cup may be a bit shallow, so let's just make him a little bit deeper as well. There we go. Okay, so there we go. So there's the cup handle. In fact, I might make him kind of wide as well, like a cup handle might be. click on smooth to smooth them out, and now we've got a teacup with this handle. Now I'm going to create the table. I'm just going to save that briefly as well. Okay, just so that in case anything goes wrong, we always want to have a saved copy. So now I'm just going to create a plane now, and this plane is going to be the table that this cup sits on. So I've just created a plane. I'm going to move it to roughly underneath the cup, and in the perspective viewport now I'm just going to scale him out like that, and like that to give a table. I'm going to give, and so now I've got a table that the cup is sitting on. Let's get rid of the grid. So there's our cup on the table, and I'm going to give it a little bit of thickness, but I'm going to do that in a second once I've textured it. So we've now got a cup sitting on a table. That's great. So if I look through the camera viewport, there's the camera viewport, and if I just lock the camera to the viewport, I can pan around to get a composition that I want for it. So now we've got the cup sitting on the table, all modelled and ready. So the next thing I want to do is add some lights into that. So I'm going to use area lights and this thing called the Cycles Renderer, which uses something called global illumination, which essentially replicates real-world lighting. So if you have an object that is a light emitter, then light will emit from any part of that object and cast nice soft shadows. Now this probably doesn't mean very much, but in the olden days we used to have to fake the lighting in these things, and it was very difficult to do. Nowadays we can use this global illumination quite liberally, so I'm just going to switch this into GPU compute mode because it's faster. I'm going to create a plane, and this plane is going to simulate the light. So just go back into perspective again. There's the plane. I'm going to scale him up to make him slightly bigger, and I'm going to rotate him a bit like that. So he's now sort of sitting above and to one side of the cup. In fact, I might, yeah, well, that'll do for now. So that's a light source, basically. So now we've got a light, which we haven't switched on yet. It's just a plane, and we've got all the other objects. So now we're going to start to texture it to make it actually happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give that light a texture, which is called an emitter texture. Emission texture, sorry. And that basically makes it emit light. So now if I go to my camera viewport, and this will be the first time that we'll see a rendered image, so this is the pretty picture at the end of it. So if I just click on render now there for that, we'll see it renders out the cup. And we've got some issues with this. It's still a little bit jerky around these corners of the cup, so I'm just going to correct that because I clearly didn't finish that off. I need render steps to 60 as well. So if I just go back and render that again, there we go, it's nice and smooth. Now you'll see that the cup's got some nice shadows. It's a pretty boring, it's very, very bland lighting right now, but it's got some nice shadows on it. It starts to look like a real world picture. So, but it's not bright enough, and I want to increase the intensity of the light here, so I'm just going to go into the emitter material and make that 5 instead. And now when I go back to render, in fact I can just do this in rendered view, look. There we go. So now when I've got that rendered view, it's brighter. So you'll see basically I can control the properties for this light. So I can make it pink or green or whatever I want it to be, but I actually just want it to be a white light in this instance. You can do all sorts of other things with that lighting as well, which I shan't go into. But let's, for the moment, let's just create a second light now as well. So I'm going to just go back into perspective view. I'm going to duplicate this light and I'm going to move it over to there. Actually, now I'll create a new one so we don't have material and problems. So create a plane and just move it up to there, rotate it round, scale him up, and I'm going to give him an emitter material like I did just now, only this time I'm going to make it blue. Okay, so now we've got two lights in the scene, one which is blue and one which is white. You can't see the colours because we're not in material mode. I think you can see it if you do that, yeah. So let's go back to the camera and go back into the rendered view mode, and you'll now see that we've got a slightly blue hue to the colour in here, and I want to make that maybe a bit stronger as well. So now we've got sort of a blue light on one side and a white light on the other side, and that's giving the nice rendered look. So now let's texture it. We want to put some texture into this table and maybe some reflections into the cup. So let's just do that. So if I just go to this view here, I'm going to select both these items. I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to go into a thing called the node editor. So basically I just want to create a new window here, go into the node editor. Node editor is a way of creating material shaders, and basically a shader is a material surface. So we can do things in there like which kind of replicate the real world environment from a materials point of view. So I'm going to create in here, I'm going to make this, we've got a nice diffuse, I'm going to make it a white cup, that's fine, but I'm going to make it a bit reflective as well. So I can create a glossy shader, delete the old one, just squiz that straight into the surface. And if I just go into my rendered view down here, you see now that actually it's only applied it to the cup's handle. So let's just make sure it also applies it to. Whoops, that's the wrong one. That's one there. Yeah. So now we've got like a metallic cup, which isn't quite what we want, although it's quite nice, and it's rough. And if I take that down, you can get purely reflective, or you can get it really kind of fuzzy. But I actually want a highly reflective one, which is white, not just chrome, because that's just made a chrome cup, so that's no good. So I need to add in a diffuse shader, and then I need to mix the two together. So you create a mix shader, and I join those two up. So that now I've got a half of a glossy shader and half of a white shader, and then I can change the amount of each. So I probably, for a cup, it's mostly white with a little bit of glossiness. So you can see the glossiness a little bit there, but it is mostly white. So now that's a nice cup texture. That's great. Happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is texture the floor. So I'm just going to create a new diffuse texture, and in here I'm going to add an image texture, which is going to be of a piece of wood, which I think I saved one on the desktop. Is it that one? That one there, I think. Hopefully. Yeah, so that is our image texture, and it is not yet plugged in, so I need to plug that into the colour. So now it's added it to the table, but you'll notice that it's not really looking like an image texture, it's just gone red, and that's because it doesn't know how to interpret the mapping for that. So we now need to give texture coordinate to that, and I'm just going. And this can be done in a number of ways, but this is one way of doing it. It's just a quick and dirty way of doing it. So now we've got a wooden texture on there, and I might actually want to repeat that texture a bit as well. So what I'm going to do as well is to go into just one moment. Sorry, it always takes me a while to find this. Find a mapping node and stick that in. So I'm going to plug that in between those two, and what this allows me to do is I can tile it. So I'm going to just scale that to 2 and 2 and 2, and you'll see now it's tiling it. I probably actually want one like that, sorry, one in that one, and maybe 5 in that one or something. That gives me this sort of planky look to it. So it looks like I've got planks on the table, maybe 3 there. So I've got planks on the table instead of just these this individual piece of wood. But I also want to make that glossy as well, because it's going to have a slight shine to it. So let's add a glossy shader in there as well, and we're going to do a mix on that as well. So mix shader in between there, and then we can take the swap those over and stick the glossy into there, and now we've got a glossy table. It's a bit too glossy and its roughness is too high, so you can see there you've got a glossy table, but let's just bring that more like that. And so now we've got a cup sitting on a shiny table. I can add a little bit of thickness to that table if I just zoom out a little bit here, by adding another modifier to this. So if I just go in here and create solidify, and then that allows me to give a bit of thickness to the table, and I might just want to scale that down so it's more like a podium, so we've got a little bit of shape to it. Let's lock the camera to the viewport again and zoom like that, and now we've got a table with some thickness to it, and when we go into render viewport, we get our table with its thickness. So now what I would do to get the final image, I'm happy enough with that as an image, but I want to make the final image, so I'm going to go into here, and we can do all sorts of things in here to speed things up and make things faster and all that sort of stuff, just change the tile sizes and things for the rendering, but also in here we've got sampling, and this is where it all happens. So if I change that to 200 for the sampling, and then when I hit render up at the top here, it'll render me a really nice high quality version of the image, which would then be usable. And if I do go into 1:1, that is 1:1, okay, and that gives you this nice high quality output that you're seeing in that stairs render. And that is how we do 3D.